Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. This is USAPrepares.com. Kyle's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Doc Rams with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Welcome, Rick.
Morning. Good morning. I can't be that silly. Write that out of early in this morning. Goodness.
You know, Rick, it's always great hearing your voice. Yeah, I was thinking about some serious topics, really serious topics over the last couple of weeks, and one of them is just unbelievable. And why don't we just start out with Fukushima? Jeez, the TEPCO wants to release radioactive waste. They don't know what to do with it. The robots aren't working. They can't clean it up. They're at their wits' ends. We're going on 6 years. And so 700,000 tons of radioactive waste. What do they do with it? Well, they just want to dump it in the Pacific Ocean.
They're already experiencing problems from previous dump. And we had a whale wash up again yesterday on the Pacific coast, dead from radiation. And I posted that. I think I posted that one on Facebook because, in my opinion, this now constitutes the single most important hazard that has happened in the 21st century. It's like we had a nuclear war, bombs were dropped, plural, and now we have the fallout problem to deal with. And all of this is from just 4 nuclear power plants that were caught in a minor tsunami. And when I say minor, it was only 3 feet, it wasn't 100 feet, and it certainly wasn't a mile high, like the movie I was watching with Armageddon last night. Now, I'm going to say some other things. With the New Madrid fault line and what's happening at Indian Point and down in Florida, every single nuclear power plant that was made by General Electric, the Daiichi-like design, they're all more than 20 years old. They're all leaking, and nobody has yet come up with a solution on how to handle the waste material. What does that say is what's going to happen next if the grid were to go down? Oh, and by the way, the grid is going to go down. You can count on that because they're already talking about trying to build some kind of a shielding thing for a coronal mass ejection that could have happened this last week. This one we received, we're very lucky. We've been lucky 3 times now since we started talking about Fukushima and what we call near, taking the Earth back into the Stone Age as far as electric power. We're in a bad situation, and nobody is even attempting to try to address this issue except behind closed doors. The public's not involved.
Mm-hmm.
It's not right.
I was on the phone with, and I'm not going to give this person's name, very, very high-ranking person at an electric company. And I was on the phone with this person for over an hour. I know this person. And we were talking about coronal mass ejections. And he was telling me that it's possible for a given location to disconnect itself from the grid. What I'm saying is a regional area or a section of the grid could literally disconnect itself from the grid should there be a catastrophe like a coronal mass ejection. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's wonderful, because why do we all have to go down if we can save some of us, right? And it's possible.
Who gets to draw the short end of the stick?
Well, that's why some of our class needs to consider running for the board of directors of organizations like electrical cooperatives, so that we can be involved in the decisions that will protect our own lives. And by the way, that's why I'm running.
Don't you have to be affiliated for those kinds of positions with either the Republicans or Democrats? Aren't you supposed to have an affiliation? You can't just put independent, can you?
Well, it sure would help. I'll tell you what. I had a discussion with someone who is in the know about running for the board of directors. And my question, and this is, all right, now we're switching to me, and me running for the board of directors of an electrical cooperative. So we buy our power, electricity, from this organization. It's a cooperative where we're all members. And in order to run for the board of directors, you get nominated by a committee. The committee figures out who they'd like to see run against the incumbents. They decide who gets to run. And who picks the committee? The board. So the board picks the committee, and the committee picks the people who are going to run against the board members.
That's a conflict of interest by definition.
Then these people will run, and what happens is, if it's anything like it was the last time I ran, you get to go on stage, and you get 2 minutes. You get to speak before whoever shows up for the annual board of directors election. You get to speak for 2 minutes and say why you should be on the board. And that's it, 2 minutes. You get to campaign. You get to put out some signs farther than 50 feet away from the front door of the Cowan Civic Center in Lebanon, Missouri. Maybe 5,000 people will show up, maybe more. And you have 2 minutes to convince whomever you want to vote for you why they should vote for you. So when they walk in, you have an opportunity to talk to them. You have 2 minutes on stage, and that's pretty much it. You can have some signs and posters and banners and business cards. But most people vote for the same people they voted for before. Now, how does that work? Well, I asked for information about attendance records of the board of directors meeting, and what I found out was that one of the board members has been on the board for 45 years. 45 years. Another guy has been on for 18 years. The others pretty much have been on for 8 years. And that kind of tells me why things are the way they are. Because these people these are like lifelong positions. It's like John McCain. This is like our government. You know, you get selected to run, you run, and then it's a lifelong job. It was never supposed to be like that. Ever. But that's the way it is. So that explains why we have some of the problems. I know we want to talk about science today, but what I'm trying to say, class, is there's so many things that are going wrong all around our lives. We talk about Fukushima, the threat to the ocean. Japan has declared war on us. Japan has declared war on us for the second time. And this time, much worse than the last time. The last time it was just a world war. Now they're threatening every single cubic inch of the planet with radioactivity. The air, the water, the ground, everywhere on our planet is being threatened with radiation poison. And it's a killer. And if you want proof, just look at the ocean. It's
affecting the West Coast now. When I buy seafood, I have to go in with a Geiger counter. I cannot trust Pacific salmon or halibut anymore. The deep fish.
Well, and you certainly can't trust the clerk or the stock person who say, hey, is this safe to eat? Is it okay? It's like, yo, man, what would that clerk say other than what would he say or she say if you asked, is this radioactive? They have no clue. No clue what we're even talking about.
They do in Japan, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a protocol now in that whole region that everything is measured before it goes into the store. And even then, it's suspicious and higher count than it should be. And the NETC, The Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center.com, NETC.com, tells you what's going on in your point of the world at any minute. It's updated. And take a look at what you are personally enjoying in Missouri this morning. And nobody is talking about that.
How about
You're
the
up
cancers?
10 times what it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you now have 10 times background radiation. Check it, and there are Radcon level alerts going on in Missouri as we speak.
Wow. I'm looking at the map right now, Rick. Oh, wow. Let me just count.
Bringing your attention, a little sharper focus. Guess what's happening all over the world? And nobody, the news, is not talking about it. However, TEPCO, which is being run by some creepy woman out of England, is, and I talked about that 5 years ago when it first happened. And I'll tell you, we are in a state of DEFCON 4. Excuse me. DEFCON 2. Excuse me. DEFCON 2. We are at yellow alert. And that is literal. Now,
Rick, if I'm...
where's that in the media? Where is that? Well, the alternative media will have something like yesterday. What is it? The Wobble, the Great Wobble. Some of these other media places that are having pictures, and you can see it, visual, on exactly what's going on with the dead fish and the whales and the rest of it. Now, we have been essentially in a nuclear war and are now experiencing the aftermath.
Rick, I'm looking at the NETC.com map, and it shows the lowest level of Radcon 1, which is background level radiation. Radcon 2 is rising level. Radcon 3 is elevated. Radcon 4 is concern/watch. Radcon 5 is an alert.
And
in the United States,
it goes the opposite of DEFCON.
Yeah, in the United States, there are 18 Radcon 4. The reason that I mentioned this board of directors a number of times on the air and running for it, what I'm trying to say is you need to consider doing the same thing. The odds are almost impossible for me to win this position. Almost impossible. If I do get elected, it will be a miracle. Okay. However, what we do need to do is we need to start becoming involved, and we need to let people know that we're watching them, and that's what this is all about. So yes, you can do it too. And what I'm trying to say is, I'm doing it because I think it's necessary. I want to protect our power grid. I want to protect our way of life and our lives and our families. And I'd like you to consider doing that wherever you are in your neck of the woods. And as far as the radioactivity across the United States, there are 18 Radcon 4 level alerts or watch areas, concern areas. And I'm going to tell you where they are very quickly. Maine, Massachusetts. Well, Massachusetts, Connecticut, right on the border there. Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, South Dakota, Alabama, Idaho, Montana. Now, there are multiple areas within some of those states. So I just read the states. But where is it really concentrated? Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Maryland. Those are the areas where there's a significant concern. But rest assured that if you're not in one of those areas, there are plenty of other places that have Radcon 2 levels. Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, New Mexico, Nevada, Washington State, Oregon, South Carolina, North Carolina, Delaware, New Jersey, Wisconsin. And in our neck of the woods, we have Radcon 3. Yep. So all over the United States, with the exception of a small, let's see, with the exception of North Dakota. North Dakota, yeah, looks like North Dakota is the only place in the United States that doesn't have an indicator for radiation that is of some level of concern. Can you imagine that?
How about we go to the next kind of maps with NETC? Now we go to the HISZ.RSOE.HU map. That one is on events like forest fires and why California and British Columbia are burning to the ground with more than 40,000 people being displaced because of forest fires, and those forest fires are a direct result of a coronal mass ejection that came off the sun a week ago and pressed our ionosphere down to such a level that there were lightning strikes on this very dry regions of British Columbia and California. It is really serious. And there's wildfires gone out of control. Now, they're starting to contain the one in California, but the one in Canada is still serious. I'm bringing up the map right now. It's on my Facebook page. I put a whole bunch of different kinds of maps like this for disasters. There's one going on right there, right now. What is that? That is North America near Newell, South Dakota. Extreme weather. Extreme weather. What's going on with the weather?
You know, Rick, I'm really glad you mentioned this. For the price of 1 year's worth of homeowners insurance, just 1 year's, I was able to buy a bulldozer. So I did. I bought a used bulldozer. And the reason I bought this bulldozer was actually multiple reasons. One is because the fire departments in our area are known as foundation savers. What that means is, by the time they're done getting to the fire, they're able to save the foundation. That means everything else is burned except for the foundation of the building. So to protect us from fires, I bought a bulldozer, a used bulldozer, an old one. And I think that's a better choice. Doc Graham's with us. Class, here's how I look at this. Rick was talking about these wildfires, the tinder that is out there for fuel, and we have it here on the farm. The sun has been so hot, we're in a drought situation. It's really easy for fires to start. Carelessness could be a lot of things that could cause these fires. Well, you know, years ago we looked at how can we protect our farm from these fires, and we thought, well, you know, bulldozer is better than insurance. So for 14 cents a pound, literally, I'm not kidding, 14 cents a pound is what I paid for this bulldozer. $3,500, it weighs 25,000 pounds, and it works. We had to do some work to make it, you know, operational, but yeah, here it is, and it's ready to go. It's ready to go should there be a fire that we can, you know, build a fire break should we have to. And that's better than counting on a fire department that's known as foundation savers. Well, let's just talk about economics here. If you go buy a bag of dog food, and you spend $25 for a bag of dog food, and it has 50 pounds of contents in there. I'm talking about the dry stuff. That's 50 cents a pound. We paid 14 cents a pound for a bulldozer. It's 40 years old, so it's not new. It's you know, if you looked at it, you'd say, it's pretty old. Yeah, it is. It is. But I look at this as insurance. And later on, we can sell it. If we want to, we can always get our $3,500 or 14 cents a pound back. Actually, more. We can get more than 14 cents a pound back. We can probably sell it for twice as much as we paid for it. So think about preparedness at your level. And we've been talking about, you know, some of our greatest challenge. And it looks like Fukushima is a huge, huge challenge. And then there's coronal mass ejections, which are another huge challenge. We're talking about science, and we're talking about what could happen to us. And these are pretty significant risks that we face. They really are. And so what would you do? What would you do? Have you considered what it'd be like without electricity? I have. I woke up this morning, and I just started counting the things that electricity, how electricity touched my life this morning. Okay, so I look at the clock and I go, wow, it's time to get up. Okay, so the clock is running on electricity, and the ceiling fan is running on electricity, and the air conditioning system is running on electricity, and when I took a shower, the well pump runs on electricity. The electric lights in the bathroom run on electricity. So does the electric fan that exhausts the moisture out of the bathroom. Now, I haven't gone very far yet, okay? Haven't gone down to the kitchen yet. But when I did, there's an electric coffee maker. There's an electric stove igniting system for the gas stove. There's a microwave range hood that we use for an exhaust fan over the gas stove. Then there's the electric lights in the kitchen. Then there's the LED lights in the kitchen. And then there's the computer. And then there's the walkie-talkie chargers. And then there's the radio, the stereo system. And then there's a TV screen. Then there's the Ethernet switch that connects some devices. Then there's the control panel for the solar generation system. Now we've only gone 3 rooms, right? So electricity, if you think you're going to be able to live without it, the answer is I don't think so. I really don't think so. And I'm not just talking about conveniences. I'm talking about, we haven't even talked about the supply chain. So if you think that you're going to be able to live without electricity, I don't think it's going to work so well. Haven't touched the refrigerator yet, haven't touched the freezer yet, nor the toaster. Rick, my understanding is that 90% of us will die within 30 days without electricity if the grid goes down. Is that what you're finding out too?
We're going to have, how did the movie put it? There will be blood. Because panic and looters, and it goes downhill from there with things called warlords, regional Bubba, and good old boy networks, and who's who first. No, he's on second. Okay, it's going to go downhill from there. And that's why your neighborhood is the neighbor. The guy next door to you is going to be the person that either saves or takes your life.
Very good point. And here's another point. So let's say you go to a ball game. That's not going to happen for me because I'm not going to a ball game. But let's say we went to a ball game downtown in the city, and we watched, the Springfield, Missouri team play, or the St. Louis team play, or the Chicago team play. And the lights flickered, and it's the evening, and all of a sudden the lights go out. How long do you think it's going to take for people to start panicking? Will it take 10 seconds? Will it take 30 seconds? Will it take a minute? The PA system's down because the electricity's down. There are no announcements. The scoreboard's down. The lights are down, and it's dark. You only have the light from the sky. That's it. Okay. Now, what happens? The traffic lights aren't working. What would it be like trying to leave the stadium with, 30, 40,000 people? They all want to go home. They're all in panic mode, and the traffic lights aren't working. How polite do you think everyone's going to be? And these are people who are sitting next to you having hot dogs and popcorn and beer, and everything's great. And you're watching guys run around with short pants on, chasing a ball. Okay, everything's great. And all of a sudden, no electricity.
Nobody is prepared. And I would strongly recommend that every single person listening to me today at least practice like you have a situation where you have to walk home.
Yeah, would you repeat that one more time, please?
Well, I think that everybody that is listening today should practice what would you do if you had to walk home. And I think you should practice doing that this weekend. Finding out that when you go on a trip, you go to downtown to the store. Cities are death traps. Mm-hmm. That's where you're going to have mob rule and disorder. And do you think that the police are going to be out there to help you or harass you? They're not even going to be concerned about you at all. They're going to be concerned about their own family. And it's going to go downhill from there. That's when troops from another country come in and Agenda 21 comes into play. And so while you want to case harden your generators and your storage systems from China, because the United States, that's where they come from now. I remember less than a month ago, it was over maybe right around a month ago, CenturyLink, where I live up here in Oregon, had a tree fall down on a local a storage switch plant, and it knocked out a part that they had to wait a full week to get in. Just a little thing at the bottom of my hill. And it took them a week to get that part in because it came from another country. That's what they're all up against right now. And nobody has given it a thought.
All right, let me add an exclamation point to that. So the day before yesterday, we had a hydraulic failure. We have a hay mower. It's about 9 feet long. And what we do is it's attached to a 100 horsepower tractor, and it cuts the hay. It's got a bunch of little cutters that run at really high speed. And then when it cuts the grass just falls over. The tall stalks of grass just fall over. It doesn't chop them. It just cuts them at the base. And it's great. Well, we had a hydraulic failure. Now, the failure was on a hydraulic cylinder, internal to the cylinder. This is the cylinder that raises and lowers the mower. Without that, we can't use it. So we were using it, and it failed on the way home. And so we strapped it up, got the tractor and the mower home, and we needed to rebuild the hydraulic cylinder. So we called John Deere, because it's a John Deere mower. They don't have the seal in stock, but they can get it. And if we're willing to pay extra for shipping, they can get it by the next day. That's wonderful. But that doesn't mean that the cylinder can be rebuilt. If we want them to rebuild it, it'll probably take another day. So we're looking at 2 days. Now, when the hay is cut, you don't have 2 days to mess around with having the hay become damaged by the sun. Well, what we did was we called another company, and they said, okay, we are 3 days out. It will take us 3 days to rebuild your hydraulic cylinder. So our son and Mrs. Finelli went there to see if they could get the parts and rebuild it ourselves. And when they got there, the guy said, well, it was 3 days yesterday. Today it's 5 days. 5 days of waiting to get a hydraulic cylinder repaired. Why? Because the line is so long, because there have been so many failures all at the same time. So what we did was we got the parts and we rebuilt it ourselves. No big deal.
Have you noticed how Ford Motor Company has not replaced those airbags in over a year that have failed, and now people are not allowed to drive their new cars? This is a just-in-time society for delivery, and trucks are going to, and shipping lanes. That's another thing I put as another resource yesterday on Facebook, is all the ships on the sea right at this moment. And take a look at what that's about and how that's going to affect your life should there be a CMA that stops the movement of trucks up and down your highway, coming in, bringing in your food, your water, your medicine, and the rest of it.
Rick, let me see if I understand what you're saying. I believe what you're saying is there is no more of a back room at the store where back in the 1960s, if we didn't see it on the shelf, we might say to the stock clerk, can you check in the back? I'd really like to buy this item. Would you check and see? Maybe you've got it in the back.
And they would bring it up. That's right.
Right. And
that
now
no longer exists.
There's no back anymore.
That's because it is a just-in-time delivery system of 3 days. All your stores have, and okay, a friend of mine is driving to L.A., and all of a sudden his brakes go out, and he's less than 5 miles from a Ford dealership. Rance Pass, a big Ford dealership. Yet they do not have the brake linings in. They have to bring them in from another city.
Yeah, and not only that, I've heard stories from dealerships, at the dealerships, and I've seen the boxes where the dealership will go to AutoZone or Pep Boys or O'Reilly's.
Here's some bad news.
For parts.
Are all those cars sitting on his lot? Where did they come from? And who's going to buy them? They're not going to get sold. So why are those cars sitting there? And
we'll be right back. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Rick, you were talking about the cars, and it seems like there's a glut of cars everywhere you look on these dealership car lots. There's not space for another vehicle. If they had to fit another one on there, they couldn't. At least that's the way it is around here. Not only that, we're even seeing people who have mobile homes. They're living in mobile homes, and they're setting up used car lots in their front lawns to sell cars. There's so many cars that are available for sale. It's unbelievable. And used car prices are falling. Are you seeing the same thing?
Buy all those new cars. It's so intimidating. And trailers and RVs, and they have like 100 of them in their lot, and yet I don't know anybody that could buy one of those things.
Well, I agree. And
where did they come from, and who's going to buy them, and why? And they move them around from one dealership to another. It's like Volkswagen and all those automobiles that sit in a huge lot because they're undrivable in American regulations, and yet Volkswagen got them over here and put them up for sale, and now it's crazy how our society is going, and it is a last ditch of a bunch of other things. My banks are failing. And when I say that, I'm talking about edgy little things. I'm not going to talk any more about it. You and I talked about it. The banks are starting to fail. They no longer carry the cash they used to. They are now holding monies illegally. They are now making money off us in every little scrap that they can by somehow just in time, depositing. Like someone will send me a wire, and yet I don't get it for 24 hours. And ACH and some of these other things where they're supposed to be for free because it's instantaneous. One instantaneous ACH was more than 12 days. Where did it go, and who oiled that money? How does that work? Banks are lying, they're failing, and they are it's happening all around me. I'm watching it happen just like I said it would 5 years ago.
When I first set up an account here in Missouri, I asked to meet with the president of the bank, and the staff was quite surprised that I wanted to meet with the president of the bank. And I explained to him that, I'm looking forward to doing business with him, and I wanted to make sure I knew what he looked like in case we ever needed to chat in the future. I wanted to know who he was. Because, why? Because I was entrusting him and that organization with my money.
And you can't anymore with FDIC. You can't do it. They've changed policies this year alone, and Wells Fargo is at top of that list for criminality.
Well, Citibank is miserable as well, and they are dunning us right this moment for a $25 late fee from Christmas time. And I mailed the payment on time. It got delayed in the U.S. mail. Citibank hit us with a $25 fee. I pay off our credit card every month in full. And I would not pay that that penalty of $25 for a couple of days being late. It was not my fault. And after decades of being with them, they just wouldn't yield. That $25 late fee has grown to several $100s already from December. Several $100s. These people are out of control. I can't stand Citibank, and I want nothing to do with them. So Citibank, I think we should all boycott Citibank. They're just miserable. Now, what was it before? It was AT&T's Universal Credit Card. They were taken over by Citibank, and Citibank just turned a great relationship into a miserable relationship. So as far as Citibank's concerned, I'm not interested in doing business with them in any way, shape, or form. So, Rick, you're right. Banking has changed. It's not as nice as it used to be. It's distant. The friendly faces are falling by the wayside. You're absolutely right. When we come back, Rick, can we talk about going to Mars, going to the moon, and Frank Zappa, mind control, and complacency? What the heck is going on with people? What is going on? Why are we so complacent? We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Doc Ram's with us. Dr. Richard Allen Miller. DocRam.com or RichardAllenMiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. The real Fox Mulder of the X-Files. Rick, I was thinking about some of the dumb things that we do. And
we can't talk about some of those.
well, let me give you an example that we can talk about. So, I was in the kitchen, and I was thinking about refrigeration. And so, what we did was, since we built our house ourselves, we decided that, most people put the freezers in the garage. And that's because they didn't build the house thinking that they should have a freezer in the kitchen. So we bought a all refrigerator. It's 17 or so cubic feet. It's all refrigerator. And then right next to that is a matching all freezer. So we have a freezer and a refrigerator. It looks like it's, a side by side, but it's not. It's a full refrigerator and a full freezer. And it's in cabinets that we designed to accommodate this particular size of refrigerator and freezer. But I want to talk about something dumb. Now, what we've done that's dumb, and we're not the only ones. It's like everybody does this. We put the refrigerator in the kitchen, and it dumps heat into the kitchen. Okay, and then we have air conditioning to take the heat out of the kitchen and dump it outside. Why don't we just dump the heat from the refrigerator and the heat from the freezer outside? Why don't we do that? I guess it's too complicated. I guess it's too hard. And I'm thinking, this is absolutely nuts. So I'm going to modify our kitchen, and I'm going to build a venting system that when the refrigerator or the freezer kicks on, and it's the summertime, we are not going to put the heat from the refrigerator or the freezer in the kitchen. We're going to dump it outside. I'm going to pipe it outside. And why don't the refrigerator and freezer manufacturers do that? They don't do it in restaurants. They don't do it anywhere except commercial installations like companies that sell food. And they put the refrigeration heat exchanger, if you will, outside. They take the heat from the freezers and they put it outside. But we don't do that in most of the buildings that we have. It's idiotic, Richard.
I would have put a swamp cooler rather than air conditioning. All you have to do is change the vapor pressure by taking that hot air and blowing it across water standing in a plate. That's how you cool it.
Well, that's a really good choice, because going forward, I can see that we're going to have a lot of problems with electricity. I can see it. People are using more and more electricity. And one of the things I'm not seeing,
to where it comes from and how fragile it is, should we have anything happen, even a weapon like North Korea, doing anything, it's time to rethink how you live and why.
Well,
it's important.
We have substantially gone off grid here at the farm, and we've been experimenting with being off grid. We broadcasted a couple of years ago off grid, putting more and more of our electric consumption off the grid. We've been doing that. Well, now we're getting close to being completely off the grid, if we want to be. But when you do this, you realize that you just don't leave lights on. You think, well, I'm going to be back in 5 minutes, so I'll leave the lights on. No, you don't do that anymore. You're very judicious with your use of electricity, because you realize that you have a finite supply until tomorrow, until the sun comes out again tomorrow, to charge your batteries. So you can use it while you have it, but you don't want to waste it. And if everybody thought like that, I think it would be wonderful. However, the boards of directors of these electric cooperatives and utility companies are not in the business of teaching people how to save electricity. They're not. They act like,
their job is to have you use more.
That's exactly right. That is their job description. It is. They have a financial responsibility to drive more profit. That's their job.
And have it be with each person using more than last year.
Right. And overall, that individual greed of each one of these companies, whether it be a company manufacturing products or a company distributing electricity, regardless of what it is, we got to get our customers to buy more, use more, sell more. That's what we have to do. More. But there comes a point in time when there's not going to be a place to put all of the trash. As a matter of fact, I was reading an article about the amount of plastic. The amount of plastic that we're using is just unbelievable. And it has grown since the 1950s to a level that we're building mountains of trash. I'm going to that post right now. Just the quantity of plastic. Humans have produced 9.1 billion, that's with a B, tons of plastic since 1950.
I got a warning letter yesterday from my Southern Oregon Sanitation. They're the people that haul the garbage. They warned me that the next time there will be no courtesy if I overstuff my garbage bin for pickup. And that means I have an extra bag on the top, not inside the thing, but the lid is still, propped up a little bit rather than flush even. And that happened to me yesterday.
So your trash company is saying they're running out of places to put this. It won't fit in the truck.
Now they're going to charge me more money rather than a courtesy because my bin was overfilled.
Well, Rick, that is probably the case with maybe half of the bins that I see as I travel.
Yeah, they're just slightly overfilled, but where the lid doesn't fit flush, it's slightly propped up. And now those companies are complaining about that and are going to charge you more because of it.
So here's what that means. That means that when you go and get Chinese takeout food and you have this plastic tray, you're going to have to, instead of just putting the tray, rinsing it out in the sink and then putting it in the trash with a plastic trash bag in your kitchen trash container, you're going to tear it up into little tiny pieces so that it takes up less volume so that you don't get charged more. So what we're doing is we're finding that we're having over packaging with pretty much everything we buy.
That is page 2 of 17 pages I can run down on that whole thing. And worse, you can take that plastic and turn it into petroleum right there in your kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We did a little broadcast about turning plastic bags into diesel fuel, if you want. But
the old farm practice was that you had your own dump out in the backyard where you put everything for another generation's petroleum in the ground.
What we saw in farming was that the farmers would have a rock pile or 2 or 3 rock piles where they found rocks and just they're in the way, so they put them all in one pile. And then they had other kinds of piles. For example, glass. When they had glass jars, they would just put them in a pile. And you're right. And cans, they used to call them tin cans, they would burn them and they'd burn off the plating, and then they would rust very quickly, and they could put them in the ground and they would rust and disappear. But now that we have plastic that does not want to disappear, it's a huge problem. And here's what happened.
And worse than that, some of it isn't plastic, it's rice hulls. And most of your plastic bags from shopping carts now are made not from plastic, but rice hulls. They're supposed to deteriorate and decay at some point. I have never seen rice hull break down in my yard, ever. Mm-hmm. 20 years, it's still plastic.
Okay.
Or plastic-like.
There's a post in dailymail.co.uk. It says humans have produced 9.1 billion tons of plastic since 1950, enough to cover Manhattan in 2 miles of waste. Since the scale of plastic humans have created is now being revealed, 9.1 billion tons since 1950. It's the weight of 1.2 billion African elephants, and about 9% has been recycled. 9% of the plastic that we have created has been recycled, and 12% has been incinerated. The rest, where does it go? We bury it. It goes into the landfills. And I got to tell you, if you look at plastic after you bury it and you dig it up, it looks the same after you dig it up as when you buried it. That's a problem. It's in the oceans. It's formed islands in the oceans. Animals are getting stuck in it. You know those rings, if you buy a 6-pack of soda in cans or a 6-pack of beer, those rings that hold the 6 cans together, they end up in the ocean, some of them. And then animals swim in them, and then animals get caught in them. And animals get trapped in them. And they don't disintegrate. They're there almost forever. And that's what we're doing. Now, some people who are environmentally friendly will cut them so that they cut each one of those rings so that animals won't get trapped in them. And that's a kind thing to do. And I recommend doing that. But what I really recommend we do is we fight with these companies that are overpackaging so that we don't have the waste in the first place. As a matter of fact, you know what would be really cool? If we buy something at Walmart that's overpackaged, if we all do this, it would stop. If we go buy something at Walmart and it's overpackaged, and we just say, I'll tell you what, I got my knife with me. I'm just going to open it right here. I'm going to leave this packaging with you. I'm just going to take out the small contents. And then just call over the manager, ask the clerk to bring the manager over, and say, listen, I know you want this, and I know you've got a way of disposing of this. I can't use it. So why don't you take it? Thanks so much. So yesterday, Mrs. Finelli and our son went to the big city, and they came back with a roast so I could make some Italian beef in the crock pot. And when I was all done, I had this plastic tray that this 4 or 5 pounds of roast came in after I trimmed it, and so I rinsed it out and put it in the trash. Now, why am I telling you this? Let me give you the 5 or so most the worst offenders in recycling of packaging. So, number 1, Pringles. The Pringles container, it's one of the worst offenders because it's got a cardboard outer tube with a metal lining, a metal base. It's got some foil in it. It's got some paper in it, and it's got a plastic lid. That makes it difficult to recycle. Then there's Luzacade Sport. This is a sport bottle that's covered with a polymer shrink wrap that's overpackaged. So not only is it a bottle, but it's plastic shrink wrapped, and that's difficult to recycle. Then what I mentioned, the black plastic food trays for meat. They can't be picked up by infrared technology at the material recycling facility because of the pigment in them. Why do they have to be black? I don't know. I remember seeing them in yellow. I remember seeing them in white. Why do they have to be black? Maybe because they don't want us to see the blood and what it looks like on white or yellow plastic trays. Then what about the cleaning spray bottles? Those are the ones that have these springs and ball bearings in them. They're difficult to recycle. And then the next one is the whiskey bottle packaging because they have a metal top, metal bottom on the glass, and it makes it difficult to recycle because of the combination of materials. So when we used to have Coke bottles and you used to buy a Coke out of a machine for 5 or 10 cents, depending on what year you bought it, you could drink that. And right next to the Coke machine was the crate. And that's where you put your empty Coke bottle after you drunk the contents. But we don't do that anymore. We just throw them in the trash and they end up in the landfill with these plastic bottles or the ocean. It's a big problem, Rick. It's wrong. And we've gotten away from recycling glass and washing those bottles and reusing them many, many, many times to the point where it's too difficult. We'll just throw them away.
I don't have any comment. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here.
All right, let's go to Mars. So Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, and he says this is going to require some courage. It's going to require some courage. Why do you think he says that?
Well, this is a difficult situation question because man, as he is, cannot travel in space with our current technology that the public is aware of. That means that going to the moon is hazardous from radiation, and that there's no way to make it to Mars, that distance in cold space, without some kind of protection from gamma rays. The studies that were done, they were just done recently, nothing would survive a trip to Mars using a conventional spaceship. Won't work. And we don't have the technology to line that kind of a transportation system. So what we need now is rapid transit. And that's what, CERN and Fermilab is about, creating a rapid transit system going from Switzerland to Chicago. And I'm going to say that imagination is reality, and our planet, that's why Stephen Hawking is saying we have to now leave orbit and colonize other planets, because we are essentially leaving a hulk of debris behind us. If you were to take a look in space of the debris around our planet from previous satellite and other shots into space, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's
We're
a cesspool.
littering everything.
Yeah, and who did that, Rick? Do you think we did that, or do you think mostly governments are responsible for doing that?
Well, you mean NASA and Russia and North Korea and all the rest of them that are throwing things up into the atmosphere? Some of it didn't come down. It just clung around like debris.
Yeah, and now
you see that on our oceans now. And the plastic has gotten so bad that now it's getting into the food chain. And that is affecting the food chain and making it toxic.
Yeah.
And all of that was for profit and packaging things.
Doc Graham's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. If you'd like to go to the website, richardallenmiller.com, Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, do you have any specials we need to know about?
Well, I'm about to come up with my metaphysics books. Look for them shortly, and specials around them.
Okay, and that's richardallenmiller.com, Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, did we go to the moon? And here's the question. Did we put a couple guys on top of a rocket, blast off from Earth, circle the moon, get off our capsule, get out, walk around, get back in the capsule, blast off, come home, splash down in the ocean?
I don't know. Yes, I think we did. No, I don't think we did it when we said we did it. And no, I don't think it went the way it was told to the public, because of the severity of exposure to radiations. That just the Van Allen belt is a hazard, trying to go through it, and even for a brief moment. So, yes, at Mission Control, I did ESP studies with Edgar Mitchell, and that led me to the research. That was in 1971. So, I think he was in space. I think he went around the moon. I think he saw things on the moon. And all your different astronauts have something to say about artifacts and other things that are out there. And yet that part isn't published. And the pictures that are shown have absolutely been shown to be fake. So who really knows? I know that recent studies trying to send rats to Mars isn't going to work. That they did those experiments, and every single rat never made it even halfway to Mars before it was dead.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Rick,
that's what avatars and the transhumanism program is about. There's no way that man is designed well enough to be able to leave orbit. That has always been life extension, longevity, life extension, intelligence increase, those things that do. But, leaving orbit, space migration, that has not yet been shown to me to be possible with current technologies that I'm familiar with.
So, Rick, I was scheduled to speak at an event in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama. And before the event, several days before the event, the phone rang. I answered the phone here at the farm, and the gentleman had called me, and I said, "Hey, how can I help you?" And he said, "Well, it's actually how I can help you. I said, okay. He said, so you're going to be speaking about the moon landing, and you think it was a hoax. And you're going to be talking about huge lies that the government's been telling. And if they can tell these huge lies, what about the little lies too? And all the nonstop lying and deception of the government. So I can help you. I said, okay, tell me about it. He said, well, you know, Huntsville has a huge NASA presence. And so you may want to talk about something else. So I decided that I would talk about something else. And I did. But prior to that, I had given several presentations about what I believe is the moon landing hoax. And I'll tell you why I believe it was a hoax. I know that in 1993, when I was at the State Fair in the Commonwealth of Virginia for 11 days, I brought my class there. And down at the end of the hall that we were exhibiting in at the State Fair was NASA. And I'd wander off, and my plan was to let my students be responsible for their own actions and teach them how to make decisions, you know, when their instructor was not there. Leave them on their own so that they'd have to fend for themselves and grow. And so I'd wander off every once in a while, and I wandered off to the state police exhibit, and I watched their enhancing software where they could age a person. They could say, well, here's what he looks like today. Let's see what he's going to look like in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years. And I saw that. And then I saw the screens that they had for information. So when the cops pull you over, they know whether you have a concealed carry permit. They know a lot about you already. They had 3 screens worth of data and information about you, you know, in their patrol vehicles when they pulled you over. And so I learned that, and I saw it firsthand. And I also saw the NASA exhibit. And I was looking at these photographs, and they were large photographs, poster-sized photographs, and staring at them and staring at them and staring at them. And after several visits to this particular exhibit, a woman in uniform came up to me, and she said, they're really something, aren't they? And I said, they are, but they're fake. And she looked at me, and she kind of turned slightly redder, I guess, and she asked me why I said that. And I pointed out some errors in these photographs. And one of them I said, well, okay, here's a photograph of the lunar lander, and here's the pad that rests against the moon's surface. And if you look down, there's no dust on the pad. So obviously, someone dusted off the pads for these photographs, or it's not on the moon, because the jet thruster to slow the descent of the lander would kick up a lot of dust, and it would be suspended for a long time, months, because the moon's gravitational force is 1/6 of that of Earth, and there's no atmosphere there. And I said, if you were to take, you know, like a handful of this moon dust and try to make a snowball out of it, you couldn't, because there's not enough moisture to hold the snowball equivalent of this moon dust together. It would just, if you let it go, it would drift. Okay, so I explained that to her, and she said, I said, well, let's go look at the next one. And I said, here's an interesting one, and here's a picture of an astronaut on the moon's surface. And if you look right here in the gold foil of his helmet, you can see the photographer. And the photographer's not wearing a spacesuit. And if you look at this one, over here you can see the space capsule orbiting the moon. And an astronaut is on a tether, drifting out in space, but attached to this tether. And so the closest to the camera is the astronaut. Behind the astronaut is the capsule. Who took the picture? So, you know, I explained this, and she looked at me and she said, you're right. You're right. They were staged. They were staged. And years later, I was at Baker Creek Seed in Missouri, about 20 miles from our farm. And I was chatting with this guy, and it was getting near closing time. There were only 4 of us in the room at the time at this kind of like a barn where they sell their seeds to the public. And there was this guy, maybe 10 years younger than I, and his wife. I was there, and Mrs. Finelli was there. And somehow I struck up this conversation with this guy. And somehow this discussion of the moon landing came up. I don't know why, but it did. And this guy asked me, "You really believe that it was staged?" And I said, "Absolutely. Absolutely." He said, "I was the photographer. Yes, it was staged. And we did it in Houston, Texas." So that's what I've experienced so far. I believe the moon landing, as it was described in pictures and in words and in print to the entire world, was faked. I believe it was faked.
Where do we go with this? Well, I just received from NASA absolute confirmation that it was not faked. Who knows who's lying? I just sent you the link on that. And they just sent to me, because of our radio, this thing, and I just sent you a link to see what you think about what they're trying to say, and let's see if we can't figure this out. I haven't had time to look at it for myself, but I have to tell you, they're going to do it to their grave, cradle to the grave.
Well, you know, you hear things like, it would be impossible to cover this up. It would be impossible to cover up, a conspiracy this large. Really? I don't know. The Clintons are still free. They're not in jail. If you go to Arkansas, you just go to a search engine, type in Arkansas, you'll find out there are so many deaths surrounding the Clintons. If you, there are so. What about the JFK assassination?
Yeah.
Why is it?
Who shot him?
Yeah. Why is it that when he was shot, we were told that in 75 years, when most of us are all dead and buried, then we will learn the truth about what happened to John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the truth. That's what they're saying. Why can't they tell us 2 days after it happened? They knew what happened. There was all kinds of evidence. There were witnesses. The witnesses have died or been executed. I think that in order to keep the truth from coming out, people get killed. I believe that. And I believe that this is...
have already got a ring around them of people with mysterious deaths, including Supreme Court justices. There's something else going on here. We've been hijacked. And I have to tell you that even someone like me, I can't figure it all out. I just simply can't. It's scary.
I got to tell you, I had a meeting with Larry Nichols, and he was a Clinton insider. He was part of the Clinton kitchen cabinet. I met with him, and we did a video, and it's called the documentary, Revolution 2.0. And I pulled myself off the video, but I was part of this. I was the introduction to the video and the close of the video, and I removed myself from it. But when I met with him and we were standing outside the hotel, I was concerned about being shot right then and there. I really was. Rick, Senator John McCain has been diagnosed with a brain tumor that will be terminal, and I just wanted to mention that Johnny Cochran, defense attorney, died of a brain tumor. And you look at people, Ted Kennedy, brain tumor. These people are on their cell phones a lot. And I know 3 other family friends who have had tumors either in their neck or their brain and are in serious trouble. One of them just died. Rick, are you concerned about brain tumors and cell phones?
I'm concerned about the 5 gigahertz towers that they're now talking about putting up so that you can recharge your phones through the airwaves. All of this technology is going to be gone and not meaning anything in less than 20 years. Why invest in it when it's not functional? Like going from Betamax to cassettes, and now CDs, and then DVDs, and then chips, and then thumbs, and it goes down and down, and it's all about consumerism.
Okay, so let's just talk about that. 5 1/4 floppy disks. If you have your data on them, how would you get that off today? You can't. Okay, if you have a 3.5-inch floppy disk and you've got data on it, just try to read it. Just try to see if that's that diskette drive that you've got in your PC. If you got an antique PC from the 90s, just try seeing if you can read that floppy disk.
Or a magnetic tape. You remember when you had tape drives?
Yes. What I'm saying is those floppy diskettes are not readable anymore. They've lost either the drive is not working, or the magnetism on the disk material is gone. Yeah. Right. So we have, and we think that that's okay. We've got DVDs and CDs; they'll last forever. No. There's a finite life expectancy for them, and they degrade over time as well. So we may think that we've got our pictures stored. I'll tell you what. I would take a black and white photograph that is not in the sunlight any day and run a race against any of these electronic media, and I'll bet you the picture wins the race versus an image stored electronically.
Yeah, and then there's the selfies concept and the relationship of narcissism with the technology.
I have
the
never.
Whole thing is mind control.
I've never taken a selfie. It's like ridiculous. Look at me, look at me, look at me. What a bunch of egocentric people we have become. Let's talk about Frank Zappa. He was one of my instructors at university.
Vinny, you're so cool.
Frank Zappa was one of my instructors at the university, and he was absolutely brilliant. And you look at him, and if you judge a book by its cover, you probably would think differently of Frank Zappa than the way he really was.
He was an intellectual. He was actually one of the smartest musicians in history in terms of being outspoken about what's wrong in America. And guess what? They put that composite of him just on Mind Control that I posted yesterday. And do you know how many views? Oh, man, it's a truth of them. People don't realize that some of these musicians have more going on besides their music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He was an avid anti-smoker. He did not like the idea of smoking tobacco. He thought it was pretty evil. And I'll tell you what, I was riveted in his classes. Just a brilliant guy. It was great. I've been
He's
very,
like
very
a David
fortunate.
Bowie. Yeah, he was one of my heroes. Someone I've tried to model my life after like his, as a walking the talk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, so we've talked about the moon landing. I believe it's a hoax, and you're saying that NASA's saying no, absolutely, it was real, right?
Not. There you go. That's the way.
Well, here's a simple question that everybody asks. If we go on vacation and we like a place, we go, well, let's go there next year. How come we never went next year, or the year after, or the year after, or the year after, or ever? Why? I believe because we never went there in the first place. Well, Rick, here goes another 2 hours. Thanks so much for being with us, class. Above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.